Pistols are one of those weapons that, despite playing a leading role in all the armed conflicts that have taken place in the 20th century, have undergone very few changes. In fact, they are essentially the same weapon since the invention of firearms like the Colt 1911 or the Browning High Power, only undergoing small changes aimed at ergonomics or caliber. For a long time, we've seen how many companies have tried to break this pattern, which is almost omnipresent in the handgun market, failing spectacularly in almost every case, and in fact, most of the time leading their company to bankruptcy. Despite bringing many advantages and being superior to conventional pistols in some ways, these cutting-edge models, they have never been able to make the impact needed to replace the traditional pistol configuration that we all have in our minds. In this video, we will see why the traditional pistol paradigm is so hard to replace and why the current pistols that try to do so always fail. Make yourself comfortable. I'm Kevin Aguilar, and this is Guns Club. Pistols have existed for a long time, but the first one to standardize the modern pistol model as we know it around the world wouldn't arrive until the beginning of the 20th century. The Colt M1911 and the later Browning High Power are some of those weapons that succeeded because they truly improved on what came before. Before them, there were indeed single-action pistols with magazines. However, they were seen as technological oddities, and for the armies, these still weren't better than revolvers, at least in America. But the M1911 was the first to fully exploit the concept of the modern pistol, being very reliable weapons you could trust your life to. And in fact, the M1911. In the 1920s, a small modification was made to its grip for better handling. This was the only modification made until 1985. That's how perfect this weapon was. Before pistols, revolvers were most popular. They were accurate but had limited firepower due to their feeding system. The single-action Colt changed this. It was a pistol that honestly broke the mold. Generally, armies tend to be quite resistant to sudden changes in their weaponry. Was it difficult to get people to switch from this to this? However, the advantages made it possible considering the Colt. 1911's success was due to innovation. So could we say that to be the pistol of the future, the one that overthrows the old models? You just have to make a truly innovative model like the Colt M1911 was in its day. Do you remember this pistol? Was it the Zone Improvement Plan 22? Back in 2013, we were shown videos of it as if it was going to be the pistol of the future. Even I thought that at the time, although it ended up having a pretty bad fate. This pistol was made by the United States Firearms Manufacturing Company, a popular company making reproductions of historical firearms. And I think that at first glance we can see that the Zone Improvement Plan was really a weapon that was completely out of the ordinary. Looking very innovative in every way, the Zone Improvement Plan aimed to be an extremely cheap and modular weapon. Its design was not just a simple eccentricity. It is designed to have improved ergonomics and to be more compact and easier to carry than its conventional counterparts. The marketing for the weapon was focused on it being the safest pistol in the world. Its feeding system is interesting. It uses 10-round rotary magazines and also accepts other .22 long rifle magazines so you can expand its magazine capacity. The weapon received a terrible reception when it hit the market in 2013 despite its affordable price. It had multiple safety issues, like having to put your finger very close to the barrel to cock the weapon, or the fact that it was extremely uncomfortable to hold. These were genuine issues. The poor grip could cause injury to the user during firing, and even many right-handed people preferred to use the weapon with their left hand because it was more comfortable to use that way. This failure led his company to bankruptcy in 2017. Produced for only a year, the weapon became a highly sought-after collector's item. This weapon offered many improvements over conventional pistols, but its ergonomics-related problems ultimately doomed it. In order to solve several so-called problems that conventional pistols had, he ended up creating a major ergonomics issue. Other weapons have tried to make improvements to the conventional pistol design instead of completely changing it like the Zip tried to do. 22, but without losing that characteristic essence of a pistol. Like the Conceal Glock 19, a Glock that was able to split into two parts to make it more portable. The weapon was a standard Glock, which had the benefit of being highly portable. You could tuck it into your pants without any problem and carry it with you wherever you wanted. in a very, very discreet way. Well, the Glock itself can be taken apart easily, but this one literally had a cut in the frame that split it in two. The last thing impacted the gun's performance, but it remained a very good weapon. Its sales problems were more related to the fact that they were targeting a very, very small sector of the market. In addition, conventional pistols have many more options for being carried comfortably and discreetly, and of course are always ready to use. Since it failed in the civilian market, obviously it didn't even try to enter government markets. These two weapons failed because they couldn't even fill the market niche they wanted to target. The funniest thing of all is that a pistol doesn't even have to be good to be successful and influential. This is the Liberator. It was released to be used by resistance fighters in France during the German occupation. Hundreds of thousands of them were manufactured during World War I since they were very cheap to produce. The requirements for this pistol were that it had to be very small and easy to carry, that it could be concealed, and also that it was very easy to use, so that even someone who had never fired a gun in their life could shoot it. From these requirements, the Liberator was created. It was so simple because it was very likely that a large number of them would be captured by the Germans, and of course they didn't want them to be really good weapons because they didn't want the Germans to use them against the Allies. The weapon itself had terrible accuracy, but it was very successful, and this was because it fulfilled its role perfectly. It met a need, and that's why it managed to succeed. Conventional pistols are so hard to beat because, like the Liberator, every successful model perfectly fulfills a need. Generally, this grip design, which can be held with the whole hand, and the simple recoil system, always work for any need that comes up, with just a few modifications. In fact, whether for home use or military purposes, each pistol model is not very different from the others. For this reason, we could compare the single action pistol model to office clips. They were invented in 1867, and since then no changes have been made to them, because just like the pistol, they don't need any. They do their job of holding papers very well. Even today, even if other models are invented that improve certain aspects, this pistol configuration still fulfills its role and perfectly satisfies the need for a handheld weapon, whether it's to protect the home or to use against the enemy on the battlefield. These weapon models, basically, by trying to innovate without a clear direction, end up not being able to satisfy any market demand at all. So the moral of this story is that it's not just about innovating, but about making a weapon that truly meets the needs of those who require it. However, to be fair, with these modern weapons, even a good pistol can fail for reasons that have nothing to do with its performance. This happened to the Hudson H9, a very good pistol, but when it hit the market a few years ago, it came out at a slightly higher price than people expected. At $1,200, this wasn't much of a problem. However, right when it hit the market, they announced that a model with an aluminum frame, lighter and a bit cheaper, would be released in just a year. So people said, well, if a cheaper and better version is coming out soon, I can wait a little longer. That way, people didn't buy the original model. And after a few months of terrible sales, the company that made this pistol ended up going bankrupt, which meant that the aluminum H9 never made it to market. So even if a company makes a good pistol, factors like a terrible marketing campaign could ruin everything. Even though it's over 100 years old, pistols as we know them could change in the future, of course, to a more efficient configuration, even if our minds haven't come up with one yet. That's because it's very challenging to enhance this excellent weapon setup. Because even today it still does its job, and it's very hard to imagine another weapon configuration that could replace it. Even in futuristic movies, pistols are still very similar to the ones we have today. But for our part, all we can do is wait for something to happen. If you're interested in weapons, you might like this video about why there were guns with magazines on the sides and on top. It's very good and interesting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.